My name is Mina Koksal, and I'm one of the steering committee members of the Resource Training and Development Committee of American Chamber of Commerce in Luxembourg. This is the first session of our Learning Fest series in 2023, which is sponsored by the American Chamber of Commerce Luxembourg, and it is primarily designated for the members of AMCHAM, but the first session is open to everyone. So thanks for joining us. I have the privilege actually to host Paul here to give us a little bit of more clarity for those who are not members of AMCHAM Lux on what AMCHAM Luxembourg does and why it continues to support learning initiatives. So I'm going to give the word to Paul to give us a brief introduction about.
Thank you, Mina. And ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's nice to see you. First, a little bit about AMCHAM and then a little bit about what we're trying to do. So AMCHAM has existed in Luxembourg for 27 years. It's the Luxembourg affiliate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. Think of it a little bit like a McDonald's franchise. And we have the franchise for Luxembourg, so there won't be another American Chamber of Commerce here other than us. We do four things. We do networking in English. We provide information about how Luxembourg works. We do problem solving, and we engage with the government to make sure that Luxembourg stays expat friendly and solves expat related problems. You don't have to be an American citizen to go ahead and join. We're very pleased with our demographics. We are 30% American affiliates, 20% Luxembourg affiliates, and 50% people globally from wherever. I think it's probably fair to say we all kind of believe in capitalism, and we all kind of have the same business ethos of and a good business ethos for working together, solving problems, and trying to build a better world. But our contribution is doing it through business a bit. And as I said, we have been around in Luxembourg for 27 years, and we are the biggest private chamber of commerce in Luxembourg. So I guess the way we've done it has been successful. Otherwise, we wouldn't be the biggest. So now let's talk a little bit about what it is that we're trying to accomplish. One of the things that we figured out during the COVID period was that companies became more interested in the training and development of their staff. At the same time, we found out that individual people became a little bit more interested in being trained and in self-developing themselves to help make sure that their careers went in the direction that they wanted it to go, and they had a little bit more ownership of career development. We considered both of those really wonderful trends, and we decided we wanted to build on it. So we looked at, well, what's the situation with training in Luxembourg? And the truth of the matter is training in Luxembourg is, one, expensive, two, mostly done on the basis of a qualified teacher and then students who want to go ahead and learn. And as a result of that, it's not exactly very flexible. It ends up being done mostly to fit the needs of the person providing the training, rather than being flexible and adapting to the learning needs and the schedules of the people who want the training. So both because of cost and both because of the delivery methodology, which makes it not exactly user-friendly, we decided it might be worthwhile to see if we could get people who are involved in training and development together and give them a place where they can hang out together and brainstorm together and see if they can find solutions that facilitate training and facilitate training in ways which are more cost-effective and more user-friendly for the recipients. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to do it through a committee of people who are knowledgeable and capable, and most of all, passionate about going ahead and delivering at this product. We're at the early stages of doing that. So if you're listening and you happen to be someone who seems like you share a common cause with us, all you have to do is join AMCHAM to be part of the group. And I guess that's all I want to say for today, other than to thank the people who are involved in doing the presentations today, because they put a lot of work into doing it, and I guarantee that they're passionate. And I look forward to a good session, and I thank you all for coming.
So let me start by then briefly introducing myself, and then we'll get to know a little bit better about our audience, because we don't know all of you, though I see also some familiar faces. So I'm currently leading a learning and development team in Amazon Marketplace, and I have close to 20 years of experience, although hard to believe, in digitalization of employee services, employee engagement, and business transformation projects. I'm super passionate about learning and development, and super happy to be hosting it as part of our committee in AMCHAM. So let's get to know a little bit about the audience, and then I'll give the word to my guest, Matteo, for his introduction. Piet, can you help us with maybe our quiz for our audience? Give us a thumbs up if you are good to go, just to maybe make sure. Yeah, I think now everybody participated. Yeah. Piet, I think we can go.
I can close it. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, I see some about 20, 30 years of experience, and then relatively newer, younger group as well. That's great. Oh, and then I see like two extremes in the company sizes that you are working for. So that will be interesting as well, because I am working in a quite a big company, and he's from an entrepreneurship perspective. So I think we're going to be quite fitting this outlook among the audience. And yeah, I see the challenges that is faced, like mostly 3, like 8. I see 8 on professional as well. And then there's a bit of diversity, I think, in the social life range. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, very interesting results.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for all your answers. This gives us quite a good understanding of, you, so that we can actually maybe talk about a little bit on the experiences that are more relevant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I also remember one of the expectations that was posted on LinkedIn under our poster, which is like, what is the mindset shifts that we need to navigate complexity easily? So we are definitely also going to be talking about that. Okay. Matteo, can you introduce also yourself to us?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Mina, for having me tonight. Thank you, Paul, for the nice introduction. My name is Matteo. I am the founder and CEO of Chef Passport, a local Luxembourgish startup. And well, in a nutshell, what we do, we connect people worldwide through food experiences. We've been around for 5 years. We built a platform initially where we were providing people the possibility to book an online cooking class with one of our chefs. We have a network of chefs from 17 countries of the world, 14 different cuisines. So you're a foodie, you're passionate about learning a little bit about cuisines of the world. You don't want to just do it through a recorded video. So we'll talk about cooking education. That it's as Paul said, probably the vision here is to build a platform for corporate training, business training. We did something similar with cooking training. So this is the idea. And we've been around for 5 years. At the moment, we went through the typical roller coaster of a startup. We're still hanging in here with ups and downs. And this is me in a nutshell. I have around 20 years of experience. I'm a software engineer turned into a business owner. Over the years, my first 15 years were mostly in corporate. And this is where I met Mina. We had the opportunity to be in the same team in Amazon back in the days. Yeah. And then 5 years ago, I decided that I want to give it a try. I didn't want to wake up in 10 years time and regret that I never tried to build something with my own hands. And this is why I quit Amazon, started Chef Passport. And we are here tonight, and it's a good opportunity to be back.
Yes, that's great. Thanks for coming and joining us. By the way, I apologize for my voice because I lost my voice completely and trying to recover and trying to use it with full force, but it's not my usual voice. Thanks for bearing with me. If you have any questions during the chat, please submit them on the chat box. We're going to do some stops and check the questions from time to time. But besides that, we're going to also have a Q&A at the end. But if you have some urgent questions that you want to ask right away, please type them in the chat. And I'd like to remind it, basically, we are here to share our experiences with how we dealt with the changes in our life, right? We are not experts on the topic, but we have quite a good experience that we thought, and we have some solutions that helped us to cope with it. So this is why we are here. We want to share those experiences and the solutions we found for ourselves with you. We hope that it inspires, you as well, if you're going through similar challenges. But if you also have some examples and solutions from your own life, please, just raise your hand and Piet will give me a sign, and then you can also share your experiences, which will just make it richer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we're going to try to look at it mostly from a professional, perspective, but in my view, you cannot really separate professional life from the rest of your life. So I think it's going to touch all the phases of it, though we're going to try to look at it more from the professional side. So I feel like the pace of change has never been faster. And I feel like the challenges that are thrown on our way are getting also more and more complex. COVID, the pandemic is probably the easiest example, but we see economical crisis, political crisis, natural disasters. When you open the news, like all of those, news that are not super bright. And those are just the environmental factors that we are trying to deal with. And I think that there's also the personal stages that we are going through. Some of us are growing up, some of us getting old. We might lose one of the beloved members from our family. We can be sick, burnout, losing someone. So a lot of things. And I know that with all this drama, you already started to regret joining this call, probably. But let's face it, life is not always a bundle of joy. There is these challenges, complexities, and changes that are hard to adapt. And I feel like the first trick that we want to talk about is to embrace it rather than trying to deny it. I think that's the first thing that worked for me, to accept the change, that chaos and change will always be there and seemingly looking around us more than ever and faster than ever.
Yeah, I agree. In general, I think that it's just a matter of changing the way we interpret change, because change sometimes it can be scary,
yeah.
But on the other hand, it can really lead to opportunities, and both in life and in business, change will always be there.
Yeah.
So no matter how hard we try to keep things as they always be,
control, right?
But we have to deal with this.
As a new father as well, and an entrepreneur, as a human being overall, how would you rate yourself on a scale of 10 about dealing with change and complexity, Matteo?
Wow, that's a good one. So, as a father, I'm kind of recent in this world. I'm discovering a new level of change and understanding how somehow this shift in my life is helping me being flexible even in my personal life, where usually, let me say, I was always a little bit more structured. While from a professional perspective, I really think that change and adaptability is something that should be hardwired somehow in entrepreneurship, because we deal with the world surrounding us in constant change. We deal with market changes, customer needs change, events that sometimes are completely out of our control. And no matter how hard we try, there are a few things that we can do with things that we can influence somehow. But there are certain events, like you mentioned, war, COVID, these kind of things, where honestly, I think what we can do is to accept it and potentially adapt it and understand how we can turn this into an opportunity. But from a business perspective, I really believe that change is somehow core.
So we can say you're an 8 to 9, yeah.
I would say, probably 8 to 9. Over the years, I learned to be a little bit more flexible.
Thanks for mentioning actually adaptability, because also research tells us that successful entrepreneurs are great at critical self-appraisal and learning from their mistakes and failures and turning them into great opportunities by seeing them as learning experiences. So when was the last time you think about when talking about adaptability?
Well, in general, I could not agree more, because one of the core skills, I think, as a business owner, is to always keep an eye on the market, on your customer, listen actively to what your customer needs, and try to understand what could be the next product, the next service, the next opportunity, and how you can deliver value to a specific audience. And as I mentioned at the beginning, as we started Chef Passport in 2018, the idea was to build a kind of learning platform or online cooking schools for individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But then COVID hit, and
Mm-hmm.
let me say we were already around for 1.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were saying, okay, what was the audience that was hit the most? And our research that was very fast, because we had a couple of weeks to understand what was going on as lockdown happened, was like, well, businesses, there are a lot of businesses around the world for the first time with employees smart working from home. So that means no more lunches, no more breaks, no more coffee machine, water cooling, chat. And then was the people were at home and were saying, okay, probably there is an opportunity here to build a product that will resonate better with a B2B audience than a B2C. And then we created this virtual team building type of activities. So we paused the B2C model. We doubled down on the B2B, and well, in the following 6 months, we have repeated the customers like Google, Procter & Gamble, Netflix, Vodafone, Duracell. So I think that it was critical to understand that in that moment, the opportunity and the business was more focused on the corporate. And it was a shame. It was not easy, because sometimes you start with a vision. The vision is still the same, but you start with a product, and then it's a little bit difficult to let it go. But then I saw that this new service was blooming. I said, okay, and then what is next? And, even now with the world back to normalcy, we are piloting and launching new products and services that are more open to a wider audience. So change happens, adapt.
Definitely. So I can hear you that you say you change your plan because you could not control the environment. And it was an enlightening moment for me to really read that this is an actually approach. One of the biggest tips that also the experts in this area give, that you need to understand that you cannot control the environment. What you can control is your own responses and the way you feel about the changes.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very normal that we all feel a bit uncomfortable, even anxious from time to time, stressful when things change and we don't know what to do. But if we stick to the idea that there are still things that we can control, which is our responses, I think we can feel a bit more confident, because we know there's something we can change. And it's not all, out of our control. Yes, it is. Maybe not the external factors, but our responses are in our control. Of course, this is much easier said than done, right? That's why there is actually a way, a mindset that we can all adopt to deal with the situations. And I think we got to know it, especially like during and after COVID, it became pretty known, and it's called psychological resilience. So if we can actually get stronger, more resilient, it will help us to deal with these kind of changes. So it will learn not to break, fall down, not break, but bounce back from the ground again and maybe go higher. Because one of the things I really liked about a recent training that I listened to was resilience is not only about coping with change and complexities and challenges, but it's actually learning to thrive and get to a better position than before if you are really resilient enough. So I really like that idea. So actually, after looking at my past few years, I started, I tried to put together a framework that helps me to understand how I kind of healed from the complexities and how I built my resilience. So I'd like to maybe share it very briefly on the screen with everyone. I don't know if you can see it right now. Not yet, I guess, right? Piet, you don't see it yet. Just a second. Yeah, yeah. So Yeah, I think you can
Yes.
see it now. Yeah, cool. So this is completely my personal roadmap on how I dealt with the chaos that I was going through last 3 to 5 years, I would say. And we've already talked about accepting chaos and change as a fact. And then the other ones, I think we're going to talk about it during our chat, but I want to walk maybe everyone very shortly through that. I think discovering myself, staying always curious and trying to be brave, even though I was afraid from time to time. Then thinking about career in a different way when I look at it from a professional perspective and being open to squiggly career paths and building transferable skills is what helped me to build resilience. And I don't think it's something that finishes, but it's actually a circle that goes on. It never finishes. But what's in the middle is the most important, if you ask me, because it's feeding all the factors or steps that I'm mentioning here. It's staying in touch, in connection with people that can support you on the way. And we're going to talk about all these things, I think in the next couple of, in the next 20, 30 minutes. But I just wanted to show it briefly on how it looked from my perspective. And I'll have the chance to test if it also worked for you in a similar way, Matteo.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I honestly, you built it based on your experience.
Yeah.
But honestly, when we had the chat,
Yeah.
there is a fair overlap, because I think this is
Agreed. So I'll just stop sharing so we can be seen bigger, I think, on the screen. So all good. So let's start with knowing ourselves, right? How did you really discover yourself? How did you continuously discover yourself through these journeys of last, I don't know, 10 to 20 years, if you look at it from your adulthood?
Wow. Yeah. Well, I honestly, I believe that one of the key, even if it's can sound obvious, is really find something you are passionate about. Because I really think that, especially if we're talking about professional life, sometimes you don't want to wake up most of your days throughout your life and do something you don't like for 8 hours in a row minimum, really. So I really think that the key is, even depending, regardless of what was your past, we're talking about change. We're talking about getting flexible and adaptable. So really try to find something that resonates with your passion. That is something that triggered me at the very beginning, and in different aspects. For example, even in terms of how do I find myself, I try to really focus on continuous learning, continuous development of personal growth. So despite technical aspects or topics or business topics that help me enjoy the business, it's always important to put some focus on me as a human, as a person. So this is why, for example, I started being more involved into mindful activities or to self-reflection, trying to introspect. So for me, there is always a part on how I can grow as a professional. But I think that as you grow as a professional, the world becomes even more complex, and you need more tools on how to deal with the complexity as a human.
Yeah.
So the two things honestly go hand in hand. And I think the underlying principle behind all of this is all about curiosity.
Yeah.
It's all about being curious, being eager to learn more, to discover more, to be comfortable outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes I know it can sound counterintuitive, but personally, I like when I'm not in my comfort zone, because that means that I am pushing myself outside my boundaries and I'm learning something new, discovering something new.
I want to highlight something, just based on what you mentioned. Actually, the experts also define the right level to be integrated. Resilience is when you are out of your comfort zone, but you're not too much stressed or stretched that you are too anxious and start to get this panic attacks and so on. So it has to be in a sweet spot between, being stretched, but not overly stretched so that you can't operate even because of the stress, right? Yeah. So that's the sweet spot. And one more thing, I think mindfulness became pretty famous and popular after COVID. I don't want to give too much spoiler, but we are considering to invite maybe an expert on that for one of our next Learning Fest series sessions. So please stay tuned for that. But now I'm going to ask you a funny question. What did you want to become when you were a kid or a teenager?
Oh, wow. Okay. So as a kid, I want to be a writer. But I'm talking about maybe 8 to 10 years old. But then I've always been passionate about video games. So for me, when starting maybe 10, 11 years old, there was that magic on the screen, and always driven by this curiosity. I always thought, okay, I need to understand how this works, because it was like, it cannot be magic. There are people building these things, and I wanted to know what is behind. And then, in my teenage and talking about changes, I honestly went through classical studies. So I studied Latin, Greek, arts, literature. So until my 19th, my math skills or scientific technique were almost zero. And then at 19 years old, I just decided, okay, this is the time for the first big change in my life. And then overnight, I decided to enroll into software engineering university. It was hard because for 2 years, almost it was like I was not able to understand what was going on around me, but all the things, little by little, and because I knew that I wanted to go there and I was passionate about understanding what is behind software, I said, okay, and it took me a little bit, but then I got it. And let me say, the third component that really I always been passionate about is a little bit Italian, of course, about cooking, but it's also about people. And I always like building something to connect people and put people together. And there were the early 2000s. And I developed a social network when Facebook was not yet that famous for my little town in Italy. Got 3,000 subscribers. It started growing organically. And then I said, okay, well, probably putting passion, that in this case is cooking, with connecting people and leveraging technology. That was the moment where I decided this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I must say you were really lucky. The reason I asked you this was I was actually in my self-healing journey. I was reading a book, and Piet will actually paste it to the chat for all of us to see. So it's a book from Debbie Ford. And there was a question about this, like, when it was asking what you're trying to find your strengths, your passion areas, it was asking, can you go back and think about what you wanted to be as a child? And for me, I wasn't that lucky, to be honest, because I didn't do any of the arts that I thought about, which was a theater, actress, teacher, and then psychologist. But I didn't become any of them, unfortunately. I wasn't as lucky. Yeah, that's what I did. Afterwards, I said, maybe it's not too late. And I've realized that what was in core and common, and it's so fun that it took years for me to understand it, because I could find just the time to reflect back, was I like being at the stage, in the center of attention. I liked working with people and helping people. So I said, what can I build my career on now, not wasting everything I've done? And I realized that I was super passionate about continuous learning. And that's how my career in learning and development started, actually. So I highly recommend everyone this book, The Dark Side of Light Chasers. If you want to kind of understand your own journey, get to know yourself a little bit better. It asks really difficult questions, but it's worth the time that you spend to get to know and understand yourself. Now, I'll tie this career changes a little bit to also like the changes going on in the professional life. And I want to share a few statistics as well. So I'm going to be reading a little bit from time to time. But one of the recent LinkedIn researchers tell us that the LinkedIn member skills for the same occupation changed by about 25% from 2015 to 21. So in 6 years, it changed by about 25%. But at this pace, they expect the LinkedIn member skills will change by 40% by 2025. So in 2-3 years, we'll see another 40% change in the skill sets that is needed. So that kind of explains a bit the pace, I think, that we are also seeing, right? And obviously, artificial intelligence, AI, is one of the hottest topics nowadays. We're all afraid, I guess, that we might be losing our jobs to AI, maybe, like it's a hotly debated topic.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's what is for sure is that the next 5 years, every job, every function, and every industry will be transformed by AI. It doesn't mean we're going to lose our jobs, but definitely things will change and be reshaped. So those are the things that I think now that drive us to look at the career changes as well. How did you decide yourself to change from a multinational company to the entrepreneurship journey, Matteo?
Well, I think that somehow it was a little bit rooted because, you know, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father had a family business started by my grandfather in the 60s. So I grew up surrounded by people who are facing this type of life. And, you know, I just knew that sooner or later I would have done something like this. I didn't know exactly why, and sorry, more than one when. And I believe the when came connected to what I was just saying before. So as I launched that social network when I was 24, 25, I was making, or at least I was coming from a technical background. So I knew how to do things, but I didn't know why I was doing them. And sometimes I didn't know what I was doing. So, and that, you know, I was falling into the trap of many techies. And now, even nowadays, I'm talking to a lot of friends of mine from the university that say, oh, wow, I built this wonderful tool with the best technology, the most advanced user experience. And guess what? Nobody buys it. And that's a very common mistake because sometimes we have the tendency as software people to think that you just build something and it will sell by itself. And that's exactly what happened. Back in those days, I didn't have any marketing skills, any sales skills, any business skills in general. And this is why I thought, okay, I knew that one day I want to have my own company, but I'm not there yet. So this is why I decided to start my career in corporate, always taking a step forward a little bit further from technology, but always keeping an eye on technology, but try to learn all the different pieces of the puzzle that would have helped me one day to at least have a decent understanding of all the different aspects of a business. So it took me a good 10, 12 years, but that's exactly why I started. And, you know, and of course, Amazon helped me a lot because, you know, you learn a lot in Amazon. And then 5 years ago, I said, okay, I feel ready. I'm not always, you know, you're not always 100% perfect, but at least I think it's sufficient to give it a try, and the rest I will learn it down the way. And that's the main reason. So the vision of being an entrepreneur always been there. I felt that I needed to learn more to start. Corporate life helped me to go to that point, and this is what happened at the end.
I hear extremely important keywords in your speech, Matteo. I want to now maybe highlight some of them. One of them is the transferable skills, right? Because when we are making changes in our career, sometimes we are afraid that we're going to start from scratch. It is not actually true. We can build on what we have learned, and we don't start from scratch. So, and having these transferable skills, which will still work even if we change roles or industries or companies, you know, that will be extremely important. And this is something, as you said, that we need to do in time slowly, because when you need that tool set, you can't just buy it and have it like as in video games, you know, when you have this extra things that you gain and you buy the tool set, all of a sudden it doesn't work like that. You need to build it in years. Hence, it's a continuous effort. And then another aspect I hear that is, you know, this knowing what you want to do and then understanding how you can go there step by step, and not doing the same thing across all those like 10 to 20 years, right? Like changing it. And I like to share again a few interesting statistics. This is from America actually, but the average American worker has 12 jobs in their lifetime with an average tenure of around 4 years with a single employer. And given the current hectic environment, you know, changes, they are actually thinking more and more about work-life balance, and this somehow pushes people to make changes maybe more frequently to find the right place. And since now our life expectation is longer, like you know, like they're saying that in 2030, World Health Organization says in 2030, 1 in 6 people will be 60 years or over, and by 2050 that number is expected to double, which means as we expect to live longer, it's really not very realistic to expect to have the same job and role for 40 years in your career, right? So, and even if you want to do the same role, as we talked about it earlier, the skill sets will change so much to do the same role even that you will have to adapt yourself with new skill sets and new tools. Yeah.
You know, 10, 20 years ago, mobile development, this, and now it's one of them on the hype. Then, you know, we're talking now about AI development in 5 to 10 years, it will be the normal. So
one of the things we frequently talk as learning and development leaders is currently actually is the skill-based recruitment as well. The skill-based recruitment, I think, is something that we'll hear more and more. People will look more at the skill sets that you've built instead of the titles that you had in the past. Like, for example, if they are looking for someone in a sales department, but with specific skill sets, maybe they will not necessarily look for a person who was doing sales for last 30 years, but they will look at different skill sets that people build, and maybe their title was different in their last role. So I'd like to, again, maybe refer to a nice resource that I really enjoyed, discovering myself. It's called the Squiggly Career. And Pierre is going to, again, paste their YouTube channel, but they have also a book, like podcast and so on. So, you know, if you're interested, you can actually hear very interesting stories about how you can build these squiggly carriers and still be super satisfied with it. Not always, you know, like the upward trend. So that's great. When we talk about this changing career paths, how do you keep yourself relevant and up to date?
Well, I think that you mentioned about transferable skills, and you know, one thing that I like myself, and this is also a little bit the principle that the way we work at Chef Passport. Nobody wants a generalist. Sometimes you use here, but on the other end, it's important to have transferable skills. So for me, based on my experience, the perfect combination is having a vertical expertise in something, and then on top of that, build some more horizontal.
The T model.
Yeah, exactly. In my case, it was like, okay, I'm a software engineer focused on web and mobile development. So I know that is my core, but then I had to compensate and all these core skills with other more transferable skills. And the way I do it, I'm a self-learner. I really like, you know, by reading, plenty of platforms. I read a lot of books. My goal is always to stick at least to one book per month. This is what I keep on doing about, you know, business self-development. I always try to be on top of these topics. On top of that, you know, online courses like Coursera, like Udemy. I'm looking forward for the AMCHAM platform learning, so I can definitely leverage also that resource. But honestly, for me, the biggest, and I want to connect also to your slide, the best source is always people. And this is why having a strong support network, having people that can, because, you know, Google knows a lot, but I think that it's not there yet to be a human person. So I always say 5 years ago when I started this journey, I had plenty of questions and no answers because I didn't know to whom I should address my questions. Now, flash forward 5 years, I have probably even more questions but now I know I have a finance question. I have my finance advisor. I have my legal question. So I spent the last 5 years building a strong network of people that whenever I have learning needs, questions, or not only things that you can find an answer in a book, but you want to hear from someone who already went there, because sometimes it's always the shortest path.
Yeah.
We learn by experience. And whenever we have someone, it's easier to hear from a real person that went through the same struggle or challenge you're facing, understand what were their solution. It may work for you, it may not work, but at least it will stimulate your thought. And this is an option. Yeah. Maybe you can find other options, but definitely having a network of people is one of the best sources.
And I think since most of our audiences today from Luxembourg, we both are in some networks in the same, I mean, obviously American Chamber of Commerce is one of them where I actually get to meet a lot of nice people, peers, to learn from each other, which actually some of them are even on this call tonight. And then I think there is a couple of more that we both met each other, like Paper Jam,
Paper Jam, Delano, these are the local media. Let me say, we are in the place to be for this kind of.
And there's also some, I think, entrepreneurship clubs that.
Like accelerators, incubators. I am part now, not anymore as a director, but I'm part of the Founder Institute, which is a Silicon Valley-based business incubator. I ran for a couple of years. Then I am in the network as a mentor. Then, if you talk about media that support local business, as you mentioned, Silicon Luxembourg, Delano, then there is the House of Entrepreneurship, the House of Startups. So we are in a country that really supports entrepreneurship and startups. So my suggestion would be take advantage.
And I think we are lucky in Luxembourg to have such a diverse, set of resources. It's really just takes this, we talked about being brave, right? That it's not so easy to get into those networks, try to introduce yourself, get to know people, understand how things work. So you need to be a little bit brave
you need to show up.
And we're all, as human beings, we're social creatures, right? So we have this anxiety also to lose confidence or to sometimes look weird or understood, not wrongly understood and so on. But we need to, I think, force ourselves a little bit and be okay that not everybody love us or not everything will be in line with what we expect, but just be a little bit brave. Okay,
and I think it's part of being comfortable with the ambiguity.
Exactly. And then the more you do this, I think it becomes a bit easier.
And then the more you focus on what matters and the more you let go things that maybe in the past emotionally impacted you without making a big drama.
That's true. And actually that brings us to maybe the last point that we wanted to discuss so that we can also have time for our questions, which is this is actually a personal question, so you can choose not to answer or give as much as details as you want. But have you ever felt burned out, Matteo? Because I hear you were always investing in yourself, learning, trying new things. I'm sure it wasn't easy.
No, it was. There were moments where honestly it was not easy. So I'm a kind of person that I'm a little bit optimistic by nature. And I always want to look at the positive side of things, but there were some moments where honestly it was tough. So I believe, probably the lowest, at least in my entrepreneurial journey, let's focus on the last 5 years. There was this moment, I think during the second year of operations, where we raised our first round of funds here in Luxembourg, and it was And let me say, it was the first time in my life. I never raised funds for anything. It was a brand new thing for me. So for me, it was a big achievement. I was super happy. And I said, okay, I was so excited. Let's go. And then I said, probably it's a little bit of also my nature. I'm very much inclined to risk. So I just do it and I just go. So I said, okay, I have the money now. Let's hire people and let's conquer the world. So the result is that I believe that I made a little bit of poor decisions. I wanted to do too much. I had something like 4 or 5 big initiatives. We were launching in different marketplaces around the world. We were having one partnership with a big player, plus running the B2B. I hired too many people too fast and wrong people. So I made a kind of bad hiring, but definitely is on me. So this is something that I learned, and next time I will try to do better. Well, you know what? Flash forward 6 months, money in the bank, almost zero. And I was like, oh, wow. And it is incredible how much it's easy to burn cash. And I found in this situation where I was really struggling. I completely underestimated the entire tax, social security for the employees' payroll, the entire headache of this thing. So the business, and on top of that, that was a moment where my father was going through a serious surgery. So I had to go to Italy. It's still now it's fine, but in the moment we were really scared. So I had to go to Italy, spend 2 months with my family. Meanwhile, I had to start layoff here in Luxembourg, which is not a pleasant thing, no matter what, because at the end they were humans, and it's never easy to lay off people. The business was falling apart. creditors were starting chasing me because so it was a lot. There was a moment where I said, okay, well, probably this is becoming too much. But I believe that is the moment when you realize it, you are at the low. And you know that from that moment onwards, it can just change and get better. So I really believe that the moment you think you're burnout, it's not. It's just the first step to the next step of the journey.
Yeah.
And this is why I just, said, okay, this is what happened. What are the lessons learned? What can we do different next time? And just let's do it. And this is why I said, okay, readapt the product. Let's reorganize the team. Let's run another fundraising that it turned out to be successful after 1 year. So it was just a moment where there was too much going on. I think I was working 16, 18 hours per day. It was really too much. I thought, okay, I need to put boundaries. I need to come to a point where it's not only work. And then, as I mentioned, I discovered I would have become a father. So I said, this is another variable into the equation. So, okay, now I really try to be very strict with my personal time, business time, having a clear structure, moments for me, moments for the business, focus on one thing done well at a time rather than 10 half-baked, because losing focus is terrible. I mean, it's one of the worst enemies for startups. And just keep on listening, learning, changing, adapting, identify the next opportunity, and go ahead.
Yeah.
I think this is what helped me move on after that period.
Got it. Yeah, I think I can relate very well. And especially in cases where your professional life struggles, happen at the same time with your private life, challenges. I think that's maybe one of the areas when it gets really hard to cope with. And it happened to me a couple of years back when I had problems back at work with the communication and the relationship with my skip level managers. And then I lost someone at very young age from a very close family member. And then COVID hit and my husband was looking for a job and so on. So it was like there were so many unknowns in the equation, as you said, that it just keeps you maybe a bit off track. And it's really important to stop and understand, and first give self-compassion, it's okay, it's normal that I'm feeling like this, and it's a period, it's gonna pass. But also believing that, and it's so hard to say it, especially when there is illnesses, as you mentioned, losses and so on, that not something bad is happening, but something is changing. So it's not necessarily bad, good, but change, and take it for the face value of the change. And then start from there, trying to see, okay, how do I respond to this situation? Getting help, really helped me a lot from friends, family, but also from the experts, like getting some therapy sessions, healing, different ways of doing that. Maybe mindfulness sessions might work for some of the people. I think those really help a lot to recognize all the change, being, not too hard on yourself, because most of us are really very success driven, right? So when things start to go wrong, we panic and we kind of lose our trust on ourselves. Everything used to go well. What happened? Why is everything falling apart? But I think one thing we shouldn't forget, it just happens to everyone at one stage in their life. We're not alone, and we can get support to move out of that.
Absolutely. And I think it's a key message. I think something that we sometimes have we think that our problems are unique.
Yeah, that's true.
But trust me, there is always someone in the world that had the same problem and they fix it. So rather than struggling and find solution by yourself and put all this stress, rather spend the same energy to find who is out there, who already went through, and just ask them how they did it.
True,
this can help a lot.
Right now, there is also a lot of resources that can help us, and we were talking about different platforms. There is a training that I took recently on LinkedIn about how to build resilience. And Piet will kindly again help me maybe to share the link of that if those of you who have, access to LinkedIn Learning. I know not always you have it, but it was also very helpful. It was sharing the doctor there was sharing her own professional framework, not like my personal roadmap, but a really professional framework on how to build resilience. So I really also liked it and found a lot of similarities, in the solutions I found myself. Yes, that's Enhancing Resilience by Dr. Emma Leigh Roberts. So yeah, I think we're good really on time, and I'd like to ask to the audience if they have any questions, comments, share experiences. I didn't see any questions coming while we were talking, but I want to now pose and ask the audience for questions or comments.
Don't be shy.
Yes, we need someone to break the ice. And thank you for really bearing with my voice throughout the talk. Yeah, it's got better. It opened up. Yeah.
We already have a hand, Antje.
Thank you so much. I think honestly, the format isn't fantastic because it would be so much better to sit next to you and have a real proper chat about this great experience that you were sharing. So I just wanted to put one thought in addition. I mean, when in my life stuff got really, really out of hand and lots of changes at the same time, I really tried to think of the things that stay the same. And that is ridiculous, but I really thought, okay, my body is still my body. My family is still there. And, I don't know, my favorite books. And when you start thinking about all the stuff that's actually still the same, it's also a lot. Yeah, so I just wanted to add this one.
I think that's a great point. I think it's really important to stick to the things that we can depend on and that don't change during those concepts, because you need a reference point, right? To keep yourself balanced. You need that reference point. And I think, as you mentioned, things that are still there and the same give you strength and the reference point that you need. So thanks for sharing, Andrea. I think that's very, very true.
And if I can add on this, definitely, I think this also makes the difference with what is an acquaintance and what is a friend.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, the real friends are those that you should go to with, and they should be the one that stays. So especially, I think that it's a very good point, Angie, because it's sometimes, whether in loss, we need a North Star.
Yeah.
And the North Star should be always something close to our hearts.
True. Agreed. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Matteo, I really liked and appreciate the idea of the power of communities, learning communities, support communities, problem-solving communities, every kind of community, actually, because in these times of great challenges, communities are almost everything. And because we know Luxembourg is small, theoretically speaking, people outside of our country think that we can speak all of us together, and it's a small community of great support and everything. We know that is not quite the case. There are a lot of segregations in terms of job roles and stuff like this. It's not so easy to get to know people and to find out those particular people with that particular type of interest like you have, or pains as you have. How do you find your communities here in Luxembourg? Especially as an entrepreneur, because it's hard.
That's a very good point, Peter. Honestly, when I started, as many things, whatever you don't know scares you, because I said, okay, I don't even know what is happening around Luxembourg. And honestly, in Italian, we used to say that this is like cherries, because when you eat one, you keep on eating all the others in a row. And after I attended the first event back in 2018, I think it was again a Silicon Luxembourg event. I discovered a community that I had no idea. And then I discovered community across communities. Yeah. And now after 5 years, I know that each event triggers another event. And sometimes there are so many events, even in Luxembourg, that the point is that I'm not aware and I cannot even attend. But true. I would like, maybe this is something that we should a little bit demystify. That means Luxembourg has a lot of people and a lot of communities. It's just sometimes how to find them. And I believe that the way to find is start showing up, literally show your face in the events, talk to people, build relationships, and these people will introduce you to other people, to other events, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden,
a couple of them, I guess, right? Like we mentioned Founders Institute.
Well, the Founder Institute is about, for example, again, the events for Silicon Luxembourg. There is the Silicon Luxembourg apero. There is the
Luxembourg that I met great people in.
The TEDx Luxembourg, let me say, it's something that maybe happens twice a year.
Yeah.
But now, probably in these days, there are these Silicon Luxembourg summer talks.
Yeah.
So there is just a kind of apero where most of the audience is entrepreneurs, and you just go there, you have a drink, and chat with people.
Chamber of Commerces, I mean, including American Chamber of Commerce, but Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce, so there are different also varieties there. So I think you're very right. Showing up in one of them, and maybe at the first go, you won't find the exact right one for you, but it will open the doors to get to know other people that can eventually introduce you to the right community.
It's a journey, of course. It's not something that you can do overnight, but little by little, you can definitely find, build, maintain, and nurture communities.
Yeah, agree. Yes, please, Paul.
I'm listening to all what you say, and I find it very interesting, but I'd like to point out one of the problems that exists in Luxembourg that I also think we can be part of the solution of, if you will. Luxembourg is a great place for stovepipes. There's an Italian stovepipe. There's a Romanian stovepipe. There's a Czech stovepipe. There are all these stovepipes. And I will tell you, when you come to Luxembourg and you just arrive and you don't know anybody, a stovepipe is a lifesaver because it gives you a lifeline with people who speak your language, can help you connect. It's really great. But after you've lived in Luxembourg for a while, it's a huge mistake if you only live in the stovepipe that you came in. What you have to do is you have to occasionally sneak out of the stovepipe and go maybe visit the barbecue at the stovepipe next door. That's a little bit harder to do, but I think that that's one thing that we should try and do is connect people across stovepipes. And the other thing going along with that is we also have to connect people across genders. And we also have to connect people across age groupings. Because again, in Luxembourg, there's a little bit of, I go to things where I may be the old guy in the room, and it's a whole lot of young people. Fine by me, doesn't bother me. I'm happy to go ahead and mix in. But there tends to be a little bit of segregation by ages, where I think the richness of sharing is enhanced if we put diversity really into effect by mixing ages, by mixing nationalities, by mixing everything else. So if we can make that part of the mix of, in addition to going ahead and grappling stovepipes, we can really accelerate the kinds of things that you want to do. And by the way, I need to give you a compliment. You guys have done an absolutely fabulous job.
Thank you so much, Paul. And as we come towards the end of our time, so we'd like to also thank everyone to stay with us, at this hour and listen to us. Thank you so much, Matteo, for coming, and Paul and Sonia, who joined us in the room. Thanks for your participations as well and your continuous sponsorship. And thanks, Piet, for all the technical support that you've provided us. Thanks, everyone, and hope to see you in our next sessions of Learning Fest by AMCHAM as of September.
Absolutely.
Yeah, stay resilient until then.
Bye.